mean, it's the first face-to-face interaction, and it's a good year in my opinion. I have come to this conclusion after, of course, going through all the emotions that 2020 could have brought. It's an opportunity which we should be using. And for me, it has always been, every year has been an opportunity to write a book. And every year I have come up with a theme, and I have jotted down a few points. There are actually probably 400 or 500 books already in the last 2 years. And as it so happens is, I take so much time in even writing the first page that I move on to the next idea, and then I get excited about that idea, and then one more idea comes along, but the book is never written, right? So, and I had always been wanting to have this session arranged for me. So basically, the genesis of this session is my discussion with Jay, who, by the way, has been involved with NAPLI for a long time as a mentor. He has mentored our writing team as well. But my whole point was, I had read long time back, and it stays with me, though I could not implement it. Jay will help us implement that there are two types of writers: writers with small w and writers with big W. And eventually it's the writers with small w who prevail, who do good, who earn the six-digit income per year. So who are these big W writers? Big W writers are the ones we fancy we are, but we are not, right? So we get in the mood, and in the next 15 days we will come up with a masterpiece, and the whole world will applaud. It will be the next Harry Potter series, or maybe we will be Arthur Conan Doyle coming up with a detective character. But it does not work out that way. I think all of us who are here can acknowledge that. And it's not just about writing the book, it's also about writing a blog. It's also about being regular with anything you have wanted to be writing. And that is, you have to be the writer with small w, which means disciplined. Right? Eventually, in writing, it's the discipline that matters, and also a deep understanding of the ecosystem. I'll make one small confession here. I wanted to do this session. I had done all my research until I talked to Jay. And then I thought, I will listen to him and he will talk. Because eventually in writing, I realized it's about the ecosystem. It's about how much time you can save and how much cost you can save when you already are mentored by somebody who has been there. And Jay Puranik is that. So Jay Puranik is an alumnus of IIM Calcutta. He has every reason to find the excuse that he has a very busy day schedule, hectic schedule. He is in the strategy team of his organization. And yet he has come up with the books that you are seeing on the screen right now. And he's also somebody who is not just disciplined, right? I'm also not overemphasizing on the virtue of discipline. Discipline is important, but the second aspect, which is creativity, out of the box thinking. How do you even plot? How do you publish? How do you arrange your editors, right? How do you ensure that there is no single grammatical error? Because we suffer from oversight. Everything he has not just mastered, but implemented. In fact, so far as I know, I think that's what he mentioned to me. In the middle of September, he will be coming up with another of his book, which I am reasonably confident. I had purchased his book, by the way, without him knowing it anyway. So I am confident that this will eventually be made into a best-selling movie series as well. So with this introduction, let me hand over the online stage to Jay. And I'm sure what you're going to witness now will help you launch your writing career. Right, Jay, all yours.
Thank you so much, Yashasvi. So guys, I'm really thankful that you guys made some time and really took the initiative to, block out 1 hour of your precious evening. I'm assuming, or at least I've been told, that most of you guys are working class folks. There might be a couple of students, there might be a couple of people who are just curious by what NAPLI is really up to with this whole new idea of creating a legacy and wealth with your writing. So with that out of the way, I really want to let you know that I do appreciate your taking so much time out for this session. And I promise you one thing, by the end of the session, you will at least stop shelving away or putting away some of the novel ideas that you have. Like my friend Yashasvi rightfully mentioned, he's been thinking of 4 or 5 books, he's been getting ideas, But what essentially happens is, you end up becoming one of those people who are never going to finish that book. And I hope somewhere down the line, at least by the end of this session today, I'll be able to give you one quick tip, or what I would like to call a framework, which can really help you understand within half an hour whether the idea that you have can actually go on to become a book, or it's just going to be another one of those things that you end up fooling yourself that, this is going to be a great book. I'm going to write this book. This is going to become a web series. So there are a couple of nuances there. I'm not saying that any idea can be written into a book or any idea can be discarded. It's not about that, right? It's all about the bigger picture. And with that said, let me start off this quick journey that we're going to have together about creating a legacy and wealth with your writing. Okay. So, okay. Now I have a small collage of a bunch of people over here, which I'm sure most of you will find that most of them are familiar, right? So the whole point really comes down to this. Like, you have folks over here who have lived, more than 100 years ago. You have a couple of folks that are alive even today. And what really links these folks together is that they will always be remembered. So as long as, the whole society of humanity advances, as long as we are passing on traditions, we are talking about people who really made a difference, people who really made an impact to the world. So these are some of the people who are going to be remembered. Now, obviously, one thing we need to realize is that, there have been over 108 billion human beings who have ever walked on Earth, right? So as most of us would know, today you have, close to 7 billion people who are alive today. And, that essentially means there are 101 billion human beings who have walked on Earth before them, before the ones that are alive today. But how many of them do we really remember, right? So this is something which has, always mesmerized kings, and in the past, alchemists have worked towards a solution towards immortality. Kings have, spent, gazillions of their resources on, trying to crack a cure for being remembered forever, which is why, poets and script writers, dramatics, plays, all these things have come, always with one point in mind, that you're trying to immortalize someone, right? You're trying to, and it doesn't have to be a person, right? It could very well be an idea. Like, for example, you see Einstein over here, right? Einstein is always going to be remembered for his special and general theory of relativity. There's been a whole lot of stuff in astrophysics, which is possible today only because of people like Einstein. And the reason why Einstein is remembered today is because he did something which was absolutely worth writing and worth remembering. So according to me, there are two main ways, right, in which you can really create and leave behind a legacy for others to remember you by. And of course, the first one is do something that others are going to write about. And that, I would dare say, that is a very challenging thing to do, right? Because there are literally 7 billion other human beings striving out day in, day out to do something which will differentiate them. But the second approach is a lot more predictable. I think if you're able to write something that others enjoy reading, then regardless of anything else, you are going to have a certain imprint or a certain legacy that you're going to leave behind. Now, this could be in the form of a non-fiction book, right? You may very well be, say, a human resources professional, or you might be someone who uses lockdown, the COVID lockdown period, to really pick up some knowledge on stocks, or, what kind of companies you should invest into. It could be anything, right? A lot of us have had a lot of time to really reflect. And this is the time that, a lot of us can really use to come up with a great non-fiction book. Or if you're like me, if your imagination is simply untamable, and if you get an idea every time you go for a shower, every morning you wake up, you have 3-4 new ideas for short stories or novels. If you're a person like me, then you can definitely write something that others are going to enjoy reading. And we'll come to it, how you can do it, and more importantly, why you should do it. Okay, so it's pretty clear, right? I would say a shortcut to immortality would be to really write a book that stands the test of time, like Agatha Christie, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Some of these folks are always going to be remembered, right? So then that begs the question, right? How many of us really write? If it was that easy, of course, a lot of us can claim that, we have Twitter accounts with a lot of good following. We have Instagram, which captures every single moment that we want to share with people. We have Facebook, we have all sorts of blogs, we have personal journals. So the point is not really about that, right? I mean, if you are a professional, by default, you are going to write a lot of emails. So that's not the point that I'm trying to make, right? You might even be the CEO of your company, but eventually, the day you retire, the day you move on, that position is going to be filled and you will always be remembered. No doubt you'll be remembered in that firm, but it's going to be pretty much in the form of an employee ID in some database somewhere. I'm not taking that away. In fact, as part of my day job, I do work with the CEO of a global Fortune 500 company, which is actually creating some great products which are helping the global battle against COVID and in terms of the vaccine. So nowhere am I taking that away. Your professional life is always going to be important and it's always a choice. You can always continue with that. All I'm saying is there something you can create, something unique, something which is uniquely you? So, how many of us actually write, right? So it really comes down to that question. I'm sure, I mean, I can stick my neck out on this and say that at least 80% of the people who are on the seminar right now have at some point of time in their life thought that, why don't I write a book? Why don't I create something which will last the test of time, which a lot of people will enjoy reading. It might help someone solve a financial problem. It might help someone become healthier if you're thinking nonfiction. And even if you're thinking fiction, right, it might just make someone spend all night reading your book and to leave that amazing review on Amazon that, hey man, that was a brilliant book and I can't wait for your next book. So on this note, I did a couple of quick, Google searches to find out, by and large, how many people really aspire to be authors. So obviously, this answer is not going to be uniform, right? There are many of you over here who right now wish to be authors. There could be some who wanted to do it in the past, and I really hope there are some amongst you who will think about it seriously now. So this survey was conducted in America, and it was conducted across a wide demographic of people. So you had folks across different day jobs. You had folks across different professions, different interests, different age groups, different cultural backgrounds, right? And over 80% of them, I mean, had a resounding response that yes, of course, I would like to be an author if given the choice, if given the resources. But here comes the sad truth, right? Only 1%, actually it's even less than 1% of people who really start writing a book who end up finishing it. Now, I have myself struggled with this for over 10 years. So as Yashasvi would know, I did not end up writing 4 books in a year, right? It just did not happen. I mean, to really put it in an honest picture and to do some justice to some of the stuff that I've written, it's actually 10 years in the making. Now, that doesn't mean you need to wait 10 years to write your first book. The point is, do you really want to write? That has to be a simple yes or no, and you cannot lie to yourself about it. If you genuinely have that spark to write, you know that you want to do it. And you would then be amongst those 1% people who are actually going to start writing a book and actually ending up finishing it. So look at this. I mean, we just went over it, right? We have close to 108 human beings who have really walked on Earth. But why is it that Google estimates that only 130 million books have ever been published in human history? So even if you take on an average that these 130 million books were written by 130 million unique authors, which we know is not the case, but even for argument's sake, you assume that only 130 million people have ever written a book. That is actually pretty appalling, right? And that's the fun part, right? To get into that, elite club of people who have ever written a book, who've really made their dent on human history, you're just one book away from it. You're just one book away from being in that elusive 1% club. Okay, but this brings me to another very, very harsh statement. And unfortunately, if statistics don't lie, this statement is going to apply to 80% of the people on this call right now. So no one will read that book which you never wrote. It's as simple as that. It might be your best well-wisher, it might be your parents, it might be your family, your friends, people who know that you have the spark to write good stories, people who realize that, as a kid you used to write stories, but somewhere down the line, life got in the way and you kind of stopped. So whatever might be the reason, right, the harsh truth lives. No one is ever going to read that book which you have not written. So, and there are a couple of, really stunning facts over here that a lot of times people think that, hey, you know what, I'm just going to get out there. Amazon makes it possible today for me to become a self-published author. I don't need anyone or anything to stop me. Like if I decide I'm going to sit, pull an all-nighter, write a 10,000 word short story, something like a small novella. By tomorrow morning, you can be live on Amazon. You could be an internationally published author by tomorrow morning. But here's the fun part, right? It's also a very daunting thing because 1 million new books release on Amazon every single year. So you can imagine from the time our session began till now, which would be around 5 to 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, there have been at least 5 books that have been published on Amazon globally. So obviously you can imagine that it does seem very, very overwhelming. Like who am I? Why should my book be read when there are a million other books coming in this year? There are so many classics. There are people who want to read more of, Stephen King. There are people who want to read John Grisham. There are people who are reading Malcolm Gladwell. Why should someone read my book, right? So, well, the truth is there, right? If you don't write it, for sure, no one's going to read it. Now, I want to give you guys another depressing fact. 99% of the books that release on Amazon every year are written by first time and unfortunately last time authors. So what I described above really hits them hard. So, 1% of all people are going to literally end up finishing the book that they start on. But unfortunately, 99% of these people are never going to write a book again. Why? Because they see that, my book launched on Amazon. I spammed my family group, my friends, my school friends, my colleagues. I spammed social media. I ran a couple of Facebook ads. I did all sorts of promotions that I could. But unfortunately, my book just didn't take off. I did not hit the bestseller rankings that I wanted. I did not break even on the investment that I put in writing my book. So this is a very unfortunate thing which discourages a lot of authors from really writing their second book on Amazon. But let me tell you that it's obvious, you knew it even before you joined this session today. Overnight best-selling success is going to be rare. Like even somebody like a Dan Brown, did you know that his first couple of books had less than 10,000 copies in print around the world before he finally wrote the Da Vinci Code and it took off? So even for someone like Dan Brown, I mean, it's sad, right? Like I've read his interviews where he mentioned that when he wrote Digital Fortress, when he wrote his earlier books, he used to literally go to, bookstores where he will sit there, he will offer people, hand signatures, personalized signatures for the books that they procure from there. And people would ignore him. I mean, they didn't know who this guy is. I mean, what's he going to do, right? But that's when, Da Vinci Code happened, quickly followed by Angels and Demons. So these movies really, really took it to every nook and corner of the world. But none of this would have happened if he had not written his books. So overnight best-selling success is absolutely rare. Make no mistakes about it. In fact, one of the self-published authors, one of the most successful self-published authors in the world today. So I'm very fortunate to be mentored by him. He has told me that, Jay, if you think that you're going to write the best book ever, you're going to like spend a year or 3 years on it. You want to get together the best ideas, put together the most amazing story, get that killer cover and get it professionally edited and, have all sorts of promotions. And that one book is going to be your Harry Potter, right? If that is the opinion that you have, or if that is the hope that you have, you know what Craig Martin tells me, he's the author I'm talking about. You know what his advice to me is? Why don't you just simply buy a lottery ticket? It's going to be a lot less painful. You can just buy one lottery ticket and the chances of you winning the lottery are actually more than the chances of you writing one book, which is going to be a blockbuster. So this doesn't apply just to me or just to you or to some people out there. This applies to absolutely everyone. I'm not saying that you guys cannot write a global best-selling blockbuster kind of book. Of course you can, but it's a mathematical fact. The chances of you making that much money by winning the lottery is much, much higher. So what do you need to do, right? You need to first acknowledge that this is going to be hard, but it's going to be impossible if you don't even try. Okay, now another question that comes up, right? As I mentioned before, open challenge. It's theoretically possible for any one of you on this call today to be an internationally published author by tomorrow morning. Like I give this to you on paper. It's possible for you to become an published author by tomorrow morning. That there could be someone in Europe, there could be someone in Canada, there could be someone in India who's reading your ebook tomorrow morning. Yes, it is possible. But that's not the point, right? That is exactly the kind of book which is written overnight or written without professional editing or cover designing. That is exactly the kind of book which is going to fall amongst the 99% of books on Amazon, which are never going to see a prequel, a prequel or a sequel, or that author even writing again. So this begs us with the next question. How do I know whether I'm good enough to write? So, I'm going to put a very, very cliched motivational poster here, right? So for those of you who may not be familiar with this, what this poster really means is, if I am one today, if one represents me today, and I simply improve by just 1% today, which makes me 1.01 today. Now, if I repeat this process for an entire year, simply by multiplying 1.01, to 1 and raising it to the power of 365 to account for all of the days in the year, the result is going to be a staggering 38. So you would literally be 38 times as good as writing today, a year later, as you are today. And this applies to anything, right? Like, if you just start improving any skill that you have today by just 1%, and that's not difficult, right? This is the whole Kaizen principle, right? You make a small incremental change every single day or every, periodic interval of time, and you're going to get dramatic results over time. So if your question is whether you're good enough to write, just remember, whatever you are today, if you improve by even 1%, even one measly percent, in a year, you will be astounded with what you can achieve. And with that, it's also important to realize, right? Even a small deterioration of just 1% every day is enough to, tend you to zero by the end of the year. So the question you should be asking yourself is not whether you're good enough to write. Because let me put this out to you in writing. Let me put this on record. Writing well is not an accident. It does not happen by fluke. Dan Brown did not write Da Vinci Code by fluke. J.K. Rowling did not write Harry Potter by fluke. Writing well is not an accident. So do not ever be under the impression that someone who's writing well is, either just gifted or it's just a freak incident, it's just an accident that a person has written such a great book. That is absolutely not true. To be fair, writing is an acquired and it's a very deliberate habit. So you cannot just become a writer, or you cannot just excel at writing just, by taking a course or just by, giving it that burst of hard work or effort over a period of time. Like say you take a week, take a month, lock yourself up and say, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to be the best at it. That's not how it's going to work, right? It's actually an acquired and a deliberate habit. So Craig Martell, my mentor that I was mentioning earlier, so he has more than 2.5 million words in print today. And he's been writing full time for just 5 years. And the surprising part is, from 5 years ago till today, one thing that has absolutely not changed is that he writes at least 2,500 words every single day. Be it Christmas, be it Thanksgiving, be it a terrorist attack in the country, it does not matter. He goes to that extreme level where once, even when he was hospitalized, he used Dragon Dictate software to dictate 2,500 words into his phone, which then obviously gets converted to text, and then he can edit it later. But that is the kind of dedication. And now I understand 2,500 words seems a lot. I don't write that much myself, right? I've been writing for over a year, for over 10 years on and off, but with a serious discipline, I've been writing every single day for the past 1 year. And I have realized that somewhere between 800 to 1,000 words a day works brilliant for me. And I realize that the more I write, the easier it gets to write. And not only does it get easier, it also gets better. So please, please, please get this written down. Writing is an acquired and a deliberate habit. It is not a talent. It is not a God-given gift. Of course, some might have the propensity to write better than the others, but it is not something which your hard work cannot compensate for. So the bottom line here is not whether you are good enough to write or not. It's all about realizing that no matter how good or bad you are today, you can always get better. Make no mistakes about it. And regardless of the writing skills that you possess today, be it fiction, be it non-fiction, be it something you're very, very passionate about, right? Like a lot of my friends, they love football, they love cricket. They keep, they can rattle out stats. Like, I'm actually amazed by the stats that they know about, footballers from the past, present footballers. they have all these stats, you know, and they can just rattle it to remain as their gift to the world. And that is what I really, really passionately believe. Each and every one of us is unique. Each and every one of us is good enough to write that one unique story, at least, which belongs to that person. Okay, now I want to just quickly bounce off a couple of more points with you guys about the whole surprising part of the self-publishing business that I've seen. And not just self-publishing, I'm talking about the writing industry as a whole. So I don't refer only to novels or only to, scientific publications or anything of that sort. I'm talking about the modern author of the 21st century, a person who has people who read ebooks, a person who has people who listen to their audiobooks, a person who has a potential market that is, you know, dying to see one of their favorite books converted into a web series or a movie. So here are a couple of facts. I'm sure most of you who follow fiction, who follow thrillers, would be familiar with James Patterson. So according to Forbes, James Patterson, who's a very famous thriller author, he made $94 million in 2012. So if you just compare that with some of the corporate honchos around the world, you would see this is an astounding figure. Now, I'm not saying that everyone can do it. I'm not even saying that this is something which, you know, just happened by chance. Like, I think we're over that. We realize by now that a lot of hard work has gone into hitting that 1 year when James Patterson made $94 million. Now, here is the fun part. Don't look at the extremes, right? Don't look at the folks who are making 94 million, 10 million a year. Just look at the simple median. I'm not even talking about an average. Because the moment I get into an average, somebody like a James Patterson, even if you put him together in a room with, 100 people who've never written a book, who've never earned $1 out of their earnings, still on an average, they're making close to $1 million, right? So this is the reason why I want to steer clear of averages. And I want to talk about median. So median quite simply means if I were to arrange all the writers in the world today in descending or ascending order of their earnings, the guy right in the center, right? The person who is exactly in the middle of that list of ascending or descending order of revenues, that guy is supposed to earn $55,000 per year, which in Indian terms boils down to 41 lakh rupees per annum. So this is just the median, right? If you expect that, all of us have that bias, right? We believe we are above average, and somewhere down the line, it's not something left to chance. Any and every one of us can definitely beat the median author earning per annum. It is not difficult. Trust me, it is not something which is going to be very, very impossible to do. It's on the contrary, it's going to be a very predictable and a very safe way of saying that, this could be a ballpark figure that you could potentially earn per annum if you are ready to deep dive into this full-fledged. Not that I'm saying that you should quit your jobs and start on this tomorrow, because it's not going to be that the first year you start writing, you're going to hit 41 lakhs, right? It's not going to happen. So with that said, I just want to point out a couple of more fascinating things. Now you might think a guy who's earning 41 lakhs per annum without opening a website, without really hiring sales and marketing people, because essentially an author is something that I like to call an entrepreneur, right? Because every modern author in today's day and age is actually an entrepreneur. Given that self-publishing has become so big and you are literally your own boss, right from choosing your cover design, right from choosing what description you want at the back of the book, to everything, a self-published author has full autonomy over all of it. And with that said, as I mentioned earlier, right, it is absolutely possible to spend a grand total of $0 today and still become an internationally published author. That's right, by spending just $0. So as I mentioned, it is possible for absolutely all 300 or 500 people that we have today on the call here by tomorrow morning to become published authors in Amazon USA. I am not kidding. It is possible. It's a very, very simple process. So if that has been the only thing stopping you, that who's going to publish my book, is my book going to be good enough? Is it going to be selected? Or am I going to waste my time writing a book? That's not true. You can become internationally published authors by tomorrow morning. But don't let that fool you. The average book sells less than 500 copies in its lifetime. And this includes ebooks as well as paperbacks. So, a quick estimate, a quick, back of the envelope calculation can tell you that even if one book is earning, say on an average, royalty of say $1 for you, or say $2 for you, uh, if a book is giving you $2 as royalty, then selling 500 copies of the same over a lifetime is just going to give you $1,000, which is nowhere going to get you close to your aspirational goal of maybe $50,000 per year. So don't let that fool you. It is possible to spend zero and become an internationally published author. Make no mistakes about it. But then don't be surprised if your book gets less than 500 copies sold in its lifetime. So with that said, let's just do a quick return on investment kind of thing. Now, if you could typically hit say a 50K annual revenue, right? So like what choices would you take, right? Would you like say you have let's start off with some lump sum value that you have with you, and say you don't have a book, you don't have a lifelong asset that you have created for yourself, which in this case talks about a book. Now when I say book, I also mean the audio book, the ebook, any potential adaptation revenue potential that you might get by if that gets converted to a web series or the next big thing on Netflix. Put all of that aside. Say you don't have an asset of that sort, you only have a lump sum amount. Now if you invest this in the right kind of stocks, if you invest it in the right kind of mutual funds, the finance guys on the call might probably disagree with me, but I'm just going to take, assuming that you're a smart investor, assuming you're not going to take too many random funds, you could safely assume that, with a good combination of stocks and mutual funds, you could potentially target something like a 12% or a 20% gain in the long term. And this is of course with risk. Like a lot of us found out the hard way, right? When COVID began, that markets can just tank, and we're still dealing with that. But of course, in the long run, you would expect to really make at least 12 to 20% of whatever you've invested in it. What if I told you the return on investment on your book advertisements is on an average 300 to 700% of what you put in? Now, if I had 50K right now to put in the stock market or to invest the entire lump sum on Amazon ads for my books, there is absolutely no price for guessing what I would do. Because why would I want a 20% gain with some risk in the long term? Whereas I can get, as much as a 300 to 700% return, if done right. That is the key there. And with guarantee. So when I say with guarantee, I absolutely mean it with guarantee. A lot of folks, so my mentor that I mentioned, Craig Martell, he earns over $1 million per year. So that is more than 7 crores per annum. He earns that. Guess what he does full time? He only writes. That's all. He just writes. That's all he does. He hits 2,500 words a day, spends a lot of time networking with other authors, spends a lot of time arranging fun conferences for other indie authors in Las Vegas every year. So he has that dream life which a lot of us would really aspire. So he's lived a full life. He's been a US Marine. He served in a couple of wars. He's been involved with a life full of action and adventure. And in his own words, he feels that now that he's retired, he can actually go on an intergalactic adventure. So he writes sci-fi, he writes interplanetary stories, and he has a very, very strong following. And there is one secret that he told me. So just like him, there are many other 7-figure full-time indie authors, and you would not have probably heard of many of them. Everyone here has heard of Chetan Bhagat. We've all heard of Amish Tripathi. We've heard of a lot of great authors, right? A lot of traditionally published good authors. But there are so many, many more indie authors, so many, many more who are earning 7-figure consistent incomes only through Amazon ads on their books, only by churning out good quality books. And you know what the secret is? You know the reason why you have not heard of some of these authors, but they are still making far more money than some of your favorite traditionally published authors. This is the secret. They believe in just one simple thing. It is extremely hard to sell one book to 100,000 readers, but it is surprisingly easy to sell 10 books to 10,000 readers. So if you do the math, if one book is going to get you $1 in royalty, you're looking at $100,000 royalty. If you were to go crazy with one book, write that one Da Vinci Code or write that one Harry Potter book and try and in fact Harry Potter is a bad example because that was itself a series. So you write that one book and try to sell it to 100,000 people. It's going to be really difficult. It's not going to be difficult just for you and me. It's difficult even for really, really good established authors. And this is actually one of the greatest problems with traditional publishing. Not only do you get a not only do you get a poor royalty, but you also bank on, all eggs in one basket kind of thing. You need to go out with one book. If it makes it big, if it goes to a certain threshold of readers, then and only then was it really worth it. But on the other hand, if you're a self-published author, it's quite easy for you to pitch 10 books to 10,000 readers. Now, why I'm saying it's easy is because typically, if you notice, a lot of self-published authors, and in fact, even traditional published authors nowadays, they have started writing in series. So if you notice, Dan Brown, he started off with standalone books. There was Digital Fortress, there was Angels and Demons, there was Da Vinci Code, although it was linked by a common character, Robert Langdon. Similar to, in Sherlock Holmes, you have a common set of characters who repeat. But if you notice, even Dan Brown has recently pivoted to a model where he writes Robert Langdon book 1, Robert Langdon book 2. The reason being, when you do this, you only need to advertise the first book in your series. So right now, as part of my Letters of a Bloodline series, I have 2 books that are going out. I hope this is visible. But if you notice, there is a world of a difference in their thickness. So the first book that I wrote, Thicker Than Blood, this book is meant to be a short prequel novella, something which really introduces the reader to the series. And the best part of doing this is that now when I finish my series, I will only be advertising the first book. Because with the right quality of story, with the right kind of marketing to reach out to the right kind of readers, my first book is going to have an upwards of a 50% conversion rate. What that means is 50 people out of 100 who read my first book are definitely going to read my second book without me dropping them an email, without me reaching out to them through any kind of advertisement. So you can straight away see that, with one book being, all eggs in one basket, all your marketing efforts, everything on one book, including, the top line returns that you're going to get. If everything is based on one book, you're taking a very dangerous path. And it's very difficult to do as well. Instead, it's much easier to write a series so that you funnel in people to your first book, preferably make it a little short, preferably try and make it very, very engaging and super, super customized for the genre or the target market that you're writing for. After that, all you have to do is write a series. And as I mentioned, right, as a self-published author, you have full independence. You can discontinue a series, you can add more books to the series. So this is where you can chip and chop, and through a continuous improvement process, you can always nail down that formula. You can eventually nail down that formula, which will give you at least a 3x to a 7x return on whatever ad spend you do on that book. And why I mentioned that this is with guarantee is for the simple reason that you're not going to write just one book. You are going to write multiple books. You're going to write to market. You're going to learn from the feedback you get from the market. And as soon as you realize a certain book or a certain series is not working, you integrate your, continuous feedback loop. You try and see what's working, what's not. And you will then end up writing a series which is going to be immensely profitable. This is a fact. This is not an opinion. This is not some judgment that I'm making. This is not some motivation pep talk that I'm giving that each and every one of you can become great authors. There's absolutely no merit in calling this a pep talk for the simple reason that all of you can actually do it. As I mentioned, writing is not a talent. It is not an inborn quality. It is something that you work on every single day. Okay. So now I would like to take a quick moment to walk you through how these 2 books that I just showed you really made it to some of the bestseller lists. So I want to draw your attention to the header for just a moment. You never write a bestseller. You always sell one. So I'd like to share an interesting anecdote. I'm sure all of you guys are familiar with the Twilight series, right? Which Stephenie Meyer wrote and has now become, obviously with all the movies and all, it's become pretty much a cult classic. It's become a very popular one, which is really given resurgence to the paranormal romance or shifters genre, as we call it. Shifters because, people are shifting their shapes, as in they're creatures which can become other species as well. Like, you have werewolves in there, you have vampires in there. So Stephenie Meyer's book was traditionally published, and it was actually a matter of great luck that her book got picked up. Now, I'm not saying this to disrespect her or to troll her. Please don't get me wrong. That's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make here is, but for your book to be selected by a traditional publisher, it takes an enormous amount of luck. You need to have the right agent who's going to pitch your book. You need to have the right kind of editing and cover designing that happens on the book, because you as an author have very little control over even the title of your book if you get a traditional publisher. So Stephenie Meyer's book was one of those cases where she had simply submitted an application to one of the major publishers, and her book stayed there for 18 months. Nobody looked at it. It was by accident that someone picked it up over there, and they really, really loved the story. So I'm not taking anything away. There was a lot of merit to the story. It was a great concept, a good blend of young adult, paranormal romance, shifters. So all of this put together, and of course, the whole Harry Potter wave about, young people mixing paranormal with urban fantasy. So some of those things really clicked. So the key point I'm trying to make over here is it's not important to just write a bestseller, right? You need to get it out there. You need people to really read it. And if Stephenie Meyer's book, for no matter how good it was, if it had not been picked up, if that stroke of luck had not happened, none of us would have heard of it. And that is the unfortunate truth. Now, I've put a couple of screenshots over here, and this really sums up what two of my books have done over the last 1 year since they got published. So over the past 1 year, I have acquired readers from 15 plus countries. So of course, starting with India, and US and UK continue to be really, really good strongholds for me in terms of my readership. I've been very fortunate and really, really surprised how somebody in Germany picked up my book, because to be fair, I did not promote my book in Germany or Netherlands. I was surprised when someone from Japan wrote an email to me and said that, I've read your book and I'm really keen to know when your next book is coming out. Australia, New Zealand, Brazil, UAE, Singapore, these are just some of the countries where I've had readers from. And, while I discover this process, sometimes it amazes me. Like, I have not reached out to anyone in Germany. How did someone buy that book in Germany? I don't get it. So there are a couple of things that I realized later on, that, getting Amazon's algorithm behind your back can be really, really helpful. So it's not just about who you sell your books to. It's not just about how many books you sell. It's about who you sell your books to as well. So if you have positioned your book well with the right genre specific cover, if you have been able to target the right 100, 200 people who are going to like your book, if you have targeted those people to buy your initial couple of copies, Amazon's algorithm is working behind the scenes 24/7 to make sure your book succeeds. They are going to automatically find the next 200, 300 people who are similar to those people who have bought your book. Just like how when you shop for a book, it shows you similar books to this. Exactly in the same way, for your book in the backend, Amazon is looking for similar customers who have bought books like this. And that is how getting that right is spot on important. With that said and done, I'm really happy to let you know that both of these books from the Letters of a Bloodline series, they hit Amazon bestseller ranks 1, 2, 3, and 4. And as you can see in the screenshots, my book was right up there with Dan Brown, his book called Origin, Jeffrey Archer's release, Nothing Ventured, which came out last year. So as you can see, these are two books which were released around the same time as my book. And no jokes here, no fraud here. Like if you can see, this is the top 100 paid category, because there are a lot of times where people really set their book for free, and then they'll have thousands of people download their book in a relatively short period of time to soar up the ranks. But the real meat is being in the top paid category, right? So this is where my book was ranked 3 in the Amazon bestsellers in historical fiction, right behind Jeffrey Archer and Dan Brown. I was even more pleasantly surprised when my second book. So as I mentioned, right, I had already had close to 50% people who had bought my first book who were waiting for my second book. So I got a really good spurt of sales for my second book, which propelled it to the #1 bestseller in the historical fiction category. So this is my second book, which came out in February this year. So in a relatively short period of time, I was able to soar to the bestseller ranks alongside a lot of famous authors. Now, how did I do it? So it's not magic, or, at the risk of sounding a little proud, I'll say it's not even fluke. Like, I knew precisely that this is going to happen because of what I had learned from my experience with my first book. And I used some of those principles. I really iterated my method. Nowhere do I claim that, I'm the ultimate expert who can help you out. But I can guarantee you is that I'm a better writer today than I was yesterday. And tomorrow I'm going to be an even better writer. And the same thing can apply to you if you just start, no matter where you are today. If you just start writing today with some guidance, with some mentorship, with some, I can share a couple of resources to help you guys get started. And in fact, for those of you who are going to stay up till the end of the seminar, I'm actually going to provide you something free of cost, which will at least ensure that you don't discard novel ideas anymore. So stop doing it from today. Okay, so how did I do it? Broadly, I distilled down a book's success to broadly three things, and that is why I have these three distinct philosophies or three distinct lines of thought, which I like to call as author academy, author alchemy, and author armory. So according to me, it is only these three lines of thought or only these three philosophies which can, in a predictable manner, get your book to really soar the Amazon ranks. And it doesn't matter, right? I was a first-time author when I was going neck to neck with Jeffrey Archer and Dan Brown. This is only my second book, which made it to the #1 bestseller in the entire Amazon India store for historical fiction. So, and this is around the time when Amish Tripathi had released his latest book. This was around the time when there were a lot of indie authors who were really aggressive on marketing. And there's one small secret I want to share with you guys before I get into the three pillars. I have not spent a single rupee in advertisement for all the results that you see over here. I have not spent a single rupee. Why? For the simple reason. If I spend anything on advertising today, it's only going to bump up the sales of these two books, right? Which is not going to help me in the long run. What I really want to do is, I want to complete my series as soon as possible. So there are another 2 or 3 books which will come in this series. And once that is done, I will simply bombard the first book with all sorts of Amazon, Facebook ads to the right kind of people. So yeah, so coming back to how did I really do it? So the 3 lines of philosophy that I have. One is author academy. What this literally means is that the whole craft of writing, right? How do you write a good book? What should your story really contain? That is one thing which I like to cover in my whole line of philosophy called author academy. So this is where, we discuss certain things like what makes a character memorable, or what makes a story something which, makes it feel like, yeah, this was a one-time read. I can read this book once. I don't think I can ever read this book again. Or, I'm sure this has happened with you and your friends, right? Like when you ask someone for a review of a movie, how was this? Some new movie comes out in the theater, and you'll have a lot of folks telling you, yeah, one-time watch it. Like, you can watch it once, or you can give it a pass. Whereas on the other hand, you have a couple of movies. I mean, I have enlisted some of my favorite ones later on in this session, where, those are movies which I can literally watch anytime it comes on television. I can simply watch it. I don't mind watching some of those movies again. So Author Academy really deals with what makes a great story, what makes a compelling story, what differentiates your story from just a one-time read to something that you will proudly keep in your bookshelf, something that you can happily read at any given point of time. Now, we come to the second part, author alchemy. So this was something which has been a really sharp learning curve for me, because, I was always in the traditional line of thought that, don't judge a book by its cover. Some of the best books have the simplest covers, or, really blank or dull covers. But unfortunately, as you can see, even over here, if you were a guy, browsing Amazon for maybe say hot new releases in action and adventure, you're not going to be able to see anything about the book except just a thumbnail of the cover, right? So no matter what conventional wisdom tells us, the cruel fact of today is that the first impression your book is going to have on a potential reader or a buyer is the cover. So author alchemy really deals about harnessing those first few touch points that your customer is going to have, your reader is going to have with your book. Things like the cover, or when they read your back cover blurb, when they read your book description, or when they, Amazon has that look inside feature, when they start reading your first couple of chapters, right? So it needs to be flawlessly edited. You cannot have typos, you cannot have, formatting errors, you cannot have grammatical mistakes. So, all this stuff gets taken care of in the line of philosophy, which I call author alchemy. And as a lot of you guys would know, right? Alchemy is literally, apart from becoming immortal, alchemy is also the, what do you want to call it, right? Alchemy is also the so-called science of converting ordinary metal into gold, right? And that's literally the analogy I'm trying to apply to the books. So the story that you write, it's going to be in a very raw shape. Author alchemy is really going to help you package it in a great way and to finally convert that piece of metal into gold. And the last part, which I really look at, ultimately having a great story is good, packaging it well is great. But end of the day, like I mentioned, right, there are going to be a million books out there on Amazon every single year that your book's going to compete with. So author armory is the philosophy or the line of thought which deals with getting this book out there, getting those initial reviews, getting those initial right set of buyers to read your book. And again, I'm going to emphasize on the right set of buyers, because the moment you just carpet bomb your new book to your family and friends, they may not even be people who read a lot of books. So out of love for you or out of respect for you, they will buy your book. What will happen is you will end up corrupting Amazon's data. So if a lot of your family and friends who are not readers buy your book, Amazon is going to think, hey, wait a minute, this book is for this kind of people, it's for these kind of people. And it's going to, at its end, the Amazon algorithm is going to try and push the book to those kind of people who have initially bought it, which may not be your right target market, right? So this is where author armory, it is that whole mindset of getting my well packaged, well written book out there to the right kind of people and not just a lot of people. So this is what I really want to tell you about a bestseller, right? You don't simply write it, you really need to sell it. Okay, so these are 4 of my books which you will see by the end of this year. So obviously 2 are out. Letters of a Bloodline, Thicker Than Blood is a quick prequel, the thin book that I just showed you. And Maya's Confession is the first full-length thriller novel. So this is more in the thriller, historical fiction, a little bit of conspiracy, a little bit of larger-than-life plots. And of course, there are a lot of twists and turns in the book. So I'm not going to reveal any of that over here, of course. My next book that's coming out is called Red Shark. So this is, again, a dark thriller. It's a psychological thriller. And the last book that I have planned for release later this year is Since We Share. This is a book highly inspired by Agatha Christie's style of writing, where you have amateur sleuths, you have a bunch of people who are not really detectives, and one of them dies, and then that leads into a surprising twist, surprising state of affairs, leading to a classic whodunit. So by and large, with my experience with writing these 4 books, there are 3 main points that I'd like to share with you guys. So first and foremost is craft is king, right? So there is everything else that you do, right? Setting up a website, getting all sorts of Amazon ads, getting maybe 100, 200 people to buy your book on the day of release. All of that is useless if your craft is bad. So if you have not done justice to certain storytelling, certain storytelling norms, if you have not followed certain tropes. So tropes are essentially storytelling tools, right? Like if I were to talk about 70s or 80s Bollywood films, that, rich girl, poor boy, falling in love, that is a trope. Or if I were to talk about, you hear this term very often, right? He's like a James Bond villain. So when you have a larger than life villain with a lot of gadgets, a lot of money, a lot of swag, so that becomes another storytelling tool, right? Which is a trope, which is the Bond villain. Similarly, you have rich girl, poor guy as another trope. Similarly, a common trope that you see nowadays in thriller books is about the whodunit, right? A whodunit is essentially a kind of mystery where the killer is amongst one of the main characters that are part of the story, and you don't know that till the end. As opposed to a different kind of book where the killer is revealed only in the end, and the killer is not amongst the main cast of characters. So no matter which genre you write in, no matter what kind of book you're going for, be it fiction or non-fiction, craft is always going to be king. So if you don't follow certain norms, if you don't follow certain professional standards, everything else is going to be useless. So this is what I've learned. This is one of the main takeaways that I've had in my 10 years of writing journey. Now, production is critical, right? As I touched upon this earlier, unfortunately, a book today does sell a lot by its cover. So no matter what a beautiful story you've written, no matter how painstakingly you've edited it, no matter how many foreign editors you've got to really fix your manuscript, it doesn't matter, because of course it matters in the long run, but I'm talking about the instant of a sale, right? When a person is going to buy your book, the first thing they're going to look at is your cover. If they don't like your cover, there is a high chance they're not even going to read your description. And if they don't read your description, they're not going to click on buy now. If they don't buy the book, they will never reach that beautiful story that you wrote inside. So production is absolutely critical. Your book should not look in any way inferior to a J.K. Rowling book out there or a Dan Brown book out there. And again, I promise you, you can do this by spending $0. It's possible. I'm not saying that you'll make it a blockbuster success, but you can definitely have a book out there by spending $0. And we're going to come to it. And at last, monetization has many heads. So interestingly, I always wanted to write out of passion. I always felt that, I do a 9 to 6 job. I work with the CEO of a healthcare firm, and, my days spent crunching numbers and preparing analytics reports and, handling a multi-billion-dollar portfolio. But end of the day, I needed that release, right? When I come home, I want my one pocket of fiction. I want my one corner where I'm in my own world, where I'm creating my own stories and I'm sharing them with my readers. That was my motivation to really write. So it was never about the money. It was never about anything else beyond that. I honestly did not expect to hit readers from 15 countries in less than a year of writing or publishing. But along the way, I realized some amazing things, like monetization has so many heads. So my third book, Red Shark, which should release pretty soon, even before I've released the book, I'm already in touch. So the producers of a couple of leading TV shows in India. So the 90s kids on this call would know that we had a show called CID, which, why am I saying 90s? Even I think millennials and beyond know what CID is all about. But the producers of CID and even some folks who might have seen Ahat when they were growing up. So the producers of that show have also reached out to me, and I'm currently in talks to explore whether Red Shark can actually be converted into a web series or a movie. So, exciting things can happen. You never know where money is going to come from. But having said that, end of the day, if you're committed to the craft, if you're dedicated to produce a top quality book, monetization is not going to be that difficult. So these are some of the key lessons that I've learned so far in my brief journey as a publisher, but a longer than ever journey as a writer. So there's a slight difference, right? I've been writing for over 10 years, but I've been published for only 1 year. Okay. So for those of you who have still waited till the end, I would like to give you guys a quick bonus. So as I mentioned, right, there were 3 lines which really ensures whether your book is going to be a success. One is the author academy part, right? The craft, the basics, the nuts and bolts of what makes your story. We also have the author alchemy piece, as I mentioned, which deals with cover design, editing, proofreading, typesetting, getting a beautiful ebook out there, getting a beautiful paperback out there. And of course, the last part is author armory, which is all about getting your book out there in front of multiple people. So these are 3 distinct lines of lines of work that goes into making a book a success. And in the future, in the days to come, I'm going to build detailed modules around each of these. But for those of you who have spent their valuable time joining the session today, I'd like to conduct just one glimpse, one sneak peek into one of the modules of Author Academy. So here's a question to all of you. Have you ever wondered why some books or movies are mere one-time experiences, as we discussed, right? I'm sure all of you know so many movies that you have seen once, but you wouldn't really feel excited to watch it again. Same thing goes for certain books. On the other hand, have you thought about what really differentiates the evergreen, all-time great stories from the others, right? There has to be something. It's not just the production quality. It's not just the special effects. It's not just the cast that, if this movie has the best actors, it is definitely going to do well. So that's not always true. There is something far more fundamental which differentiates an evergreen, all-time great story from the rest. Now, here are just a quick collage of some of the movies which I really feel are all-time greats. So, of course, we might differ in opinion on some of these, but I've tried to, by and large, take a couple of movies which, by and large, I feel are very, very popular. So, of course, you have the whole Star Wars ensemble. You have, of course, Lagan, one of my favorite Hindi movies. Saving Private Ryan, of course, one of the most iconic, legendary World War II movies. DDLJ, for, of course, all the romantic fans over here, fans of Shah Rukh Khan. Lord of the Rings, right? An iconic series of books and a brilliant set of movies. And of course, for those of us, or for maybe for those who relate more to the generation of our parents and beyond, maybe, a movie like Sholay will also stand out as one of the all-time evergreen great stories that has been told by Bollywood. So what really what really differentiates these kind of stories from the rest. So as I'm sure, as most of you would have guessed, it is something to do with the quality of the story, right? It is something to do with a certain structure or a certain subconscious message or a subconscious pattern that the story communicates to the viewer. So one thing which, as I promised you guys earlier, right, that I would give you guys one tool today, which would make sure that any small idea for a story that you have in your head, you would instantly be able to validate within half an hour whether this story is worth writing or not. And that is nothing but the 8-point plot framework. So simply put, any great story, any great movie that you see on the screen right now can be broken up into 8 parts, 8 essential components of a story. And that is exactly what I do when I write my stories. I pick up one key central idea in my mind, right? Like, for example, I want to write a thriller like Red Shark. So Red Shark is a thriller about an engineering student who investigates her friend's suicide, which she suspects is the result of a sinister suicide game. So this is the core concept. This is the core one-line idea that I got about the book when I first imagined that this is a book that I should write. Now, this is an exercise which you guys can do after the session. I'm going to be sharing a couple of links and a couple of free articles with you guys, which can help you, put together an 8-point framework for any story idea that you have in your mind. What I could also recommend is that you could actually look at some of your favorite films and see how they satisfy all 8 stages of the 8-point framework. I give this to you in writing. Any good story, any good movie, any good novel that you have, you can always convert it into this 8-point framework. So first, I'll just quickly go through the 8 stages and then I'll explain what each of them mean. So stasis is basically the current state, right? It's a Latin word for what is going on right now, right? Stasis. So every one of these great stories is always going to begin with the present state. Like, if you look at Lagan, it's about a village where, people are dependent on agricultural income and they are under British rule. So that could be the stasis for Lagan. Similarly, in Saving Private Ryan, the stasis could be that, World War II is going on. There are a lot of families, a lot of people who are dying out there. And it's basically a situation where, the life of every single soldier really, really matters. But it matters all the more so in case of Private Ryan, because all of his brothers have died in the war, and his mother is the only living relative that he has left, and they want to bring Ryan back to his mother, right? So that is the stasis. This is the starting point of the whole story. DDLJ, right? Like, a carefree boy and a rather serious girl, they meet abroad. And that is where, they suddenly start realizing that, okay, wait a minute, there is something that, some kind of sparks that are going on between them. Similarly, Lord of the Rings, right? Like, the hobbits are having a good time in the Shire until Gandalf discovers that they have in their possession the dangerous ring, And similarly for Sholay, right? You have a village, you have a bunch of gundas that are, led by Gabbar Singh, that are giving everyone a hard time. So stasis is essential. So without your story really having a starting point or a certain, starting state or a steady state, you're not really going to be able to change anything to it for the reader to really care. Now, I understand it might be a little complicated to understand here, but I'm going to share those 2 links with you, and you can definitely give that a shot, preferably with an original story of your own. It will not take you more than half an hour once you get the hang of it. And the advantage is, once you put your story down in this 8-point plot framework, you will instantly know, in half an hour, you know that, hey, wait a minute, I'm getting more excited about this story the more deep I get into it. And, I'm definitely going to write a book on it. On the other hand, you might think that you have a brilliant idea, but when you start putting it in the 8-point framework, you might realize that, this story or this idea lacks 3 or 4 elements, which are part of the 8-point framework. And that will help you decide that, either I need to tweak this now, or I need to pick up a new idea. Because in those 10 years that I wrote without really having a direction or a goal in mind, I must have shelled away, I'm not joking, I must have shelled away at least 50 novels. So that's on an average 5 novels a year I've just shelled away, I've just put away. So it happened every year. I used to get a great idea, I'll start writing, without anything in mind. I'll start writing a couple of chapters, get really excited about it. And maybe, some 20, 25,000 words into the book, I feel that, hey, wait a minute, the story doesn't excite me anymore. So this is the one bonus that I promised you today. So once you go through the 8-point framework, you will know at a glance, in half an hour, you will know whether you want to write that story or not. So after stasis is something called the trigger. This is the second element of the 8-point framework. Now, I'm not going to get into the details. You will have the articles for that. But trigger literally means, in some parlance, it's also called the inciting incident, right? So you have a steady state, you have, a bunch of villagers who are dependent on agricultural income. Trigger could be something like, something which threatens to disturb the peace. It could also, it doesn't always have to be a negative thing. It could also be a very positive thing. Like, to give you an example of a trigger, consider a fictitious story where, consider a fictitious example where there is a very poor boy and, he or she finds a suitcase full of cash. Now that can be a trigger, right? It's an inciting incident. The stasis is that the boy was poor, struggling to have a couple of meals a day. But as soon as he or she, as soon as a child, he or she finds a suitcase with say $1 million, right? That's a big trigger. That's a big change to the stasis. So if you look at any of these movies, you will find distinct elements where a trigger is going to happen. It could be positive or negative. Quest, right? Without the hero or the protagonist really wanting something or wanting to prevent something bad from happening, the story is not going to make any sense, right? You cannot have a best-selling story where a bunch of people just keep meeting and they keep discussing something, but the story is going nowhere, right? So you have a lot of movies, and this is one of the reasons why subconsciously a movie which has a low pace, which does not have a well-defined goal or a conflict, will tend to bore the viewers or the readers. So a quest is very, very important, right? Like, because your stasis or your present state has been disturbed or enhanced thanks to the trigger, your protagonist or protagonists will now need to go on a quest. This quest will either be to restore the stasis in case something bad has happened, and in case something good has happened in the trigger, the quest is going to be to really ensure that we sustain this good. Like, say I've got $1 million. Now, how do I make sure that the police don't catch me, or how do I make sure no one steals this from me? So you're going to head out on some quest or the other. You will notice that stories don't follow this. I'm not saying this is a formula or this is a pattern which every story will follow, but I'm saying these are certain sequential elements which can really, really make your story powerful. Now, a quest is going to be boring without a surprise, right? Like, you don't want, in the case of Lagan, you don't want the villagers to really go on a quest to defeat the British in a match of cricket and they, just go out there and do it. That would be a very boring story, right? You need to have a surprise. So what do you mean by surprise is, again, it's not very formulaic. It's not hard set that your surprise has to be in the sense of, something good happening for them or something bad. It could very well be the introduction of a new character. Or it could very well be where surprise could very well be a place where you reveal some more information about the world. So in case of Harry Potter, one example I'd like to take is that, they realize that you can't just kill Voldemort like that, right? The surprise is that he's got 7 Horcruxes. So to really defeat Voldemort, you would need to defeat his 7 Horcruxes first. So a surprise is typically, what in colloquial language we call it kahani mein twist, right? So surprise doesn't have to mean just one twist, but it could be introduction of a new character or the demise of a certain important character, right? Like George R.R. Martin, right? His favorite way of giving people surprises is to kill off their favorite characters. So you need to have some elements of surprise along the way. Otherwise, your story is going to be very, very linear. That takes us to the critical decision. Now, because your protagonist was on a certain quest and got surprised by a certain thing that happened, this is where, everything's kind of going off the charts. You don't know what to do. The hero's kind of in a deep point, or maybe the surprise could be that the antagonist or the villain has unleashed a new army or has got some new kind of power. So this is where a decision comes in, right? And a critical decision is one of my favorite parts of a good story, because it really, really determines what's going to happen to the climax of the story. Now, like if the villain, like let's take the example where as a surprise, the villain came up with a, completely unforeseen army. He's like, rounded up, let's say Lord of the Rings, right? Like the bad guys have, got together all the orcs, they're manufacturing, literally producing orcs by the thousands. And this is where a decision needs to be taken by a protagonist, right? Do we fight them head on? Do we go around them? Do we, do we have a battle of wits? or do we fight them head on? What do we do? And depending on the decision you take, you can have very, very different types of climaxes. So climax, I mean, obviously all of you guys know this is what really a story is all about. If there is one purpose that your whole story had, it was if there was one moment that you wanted your readers to look forward to, or your viewers, in case it's a video, wanted to look forward to it, it has to be the climax. This has got to be by far the most exciting, the most memorable part of the story. And of course, it plays out in many, many ways. I mean, if we start talking about what makes a good climax, I'm sorry, but I'll keep you guys here till 9 a.m. and we don't want to do that. So just, touching the tip of the iceberg here. One very, very important thing that people forget is reversal. So, you'd have a lot of great stories where, the hero or the villain, something happened to the Stasis, which led to a quest, surprise, fighting, everything. And, at the end of it, either the hero just won, or maybe in some bad cases, the villain won, but nothing really changed, in the sense they themselves did not have a spiritual journey or some kind of journey which shows that the character has transformed. Like, for those of you, and I hope there's a lot of you who are fans of Harry Potter, you would realize that Harry Potter undergoes a complete reversal of character. And not just between the first book and the last book, but even within an individual book. The way Harry Potter starts off to the way he ends that book, there is a dramatic and marked difference. Either he's become wiser about something, his attitude towards something has changed, or he has learned to not trust certain kind of situations, or he's learned that friendship is probably the most important thing that he has over there, because he has no living blood relatives. So these kind of things really, really matter. Like, unless you show why your character has grown, or has suffered some kind of setback, or has overcome some kind of internal conflict, it's not going to make a very rememberable character. You're not going to remember characters who did not change by the story. I mean, end of the day, think of it in this very, very brutal way. If the story did not impact your character, why will it impact your reader? Why will your reader care about characters who themselves did not get affected by the story, right? And finally, you have something called a resolution. Now, the last thing you want to do, and this is a mistake which a lot of rookie authors make, they will love to, because I mentioned that you need to write in a series to really maximize your revenue. That doesn't mean you end a book on an absolute cliffhanger, right? Like, I mean, how would you feel if you were watching a movie in a theater where there's a big showdown, like say Good, Bad and Ugly kind of situation, where you have the protagonist and the antagonist face to face with guns pointing to each other, and the music reaches up to a high crescendo, and then it just says the end. Find out 2 years later when we release the next movie. That's really going to piss off a lot of your readers, right? So having said that, you need to have just enough in your resolution, which just enough leaves enough hooks for your readers to be interested in your next book. But at the same time, you have tied up all the loose ends, all the subplots, all the different tropes that you have addressed in your book. They all should get a satisfactory resolution in a book. So typically, this is a principle even I follow in my books. Although I'm writing a series of Letters of a Bloodline, every book can be individually read, and the reader will be sufficiently satisfied at the end of the book. Of course, the reader will feel the intrigue that, hey, I need to know what happens next. I need to know what happens next. But it's never like, hey, you know what, this guy left me so unsatisfied. Like, he's raised it to a point where, two people or, two countries are almost about to, get into a war, and he's dropped it at that. That is going to be a really unfair experience that you're giving your reader, and you should never ever do that. Some people do it, but you really shouldn't do that. And even for the ones that do it, so I'm in touch with a lady who's based out of Leicester City, and she, I think it's Leeds. Yeah, she's based in Leeds in the United Kingdom, and she writes thrillers, but she has this style. She always ends her book on a massive, massive cliffhanger. But the way it works for her is because in her back cover description, right? So this is the blurb, right? What you have typically behind at the the backside of your book on your Amazon book description. She clearly mentions there in broad, bold text letters that please be warned, this book has cliffhangers. This book ends on a cliffhanger. So that automatically sets the reader's expectation that, okay, wait a minute, I'm going to finish this book, and at the end of it, I know that I will have to buy the next book. So that is all right. If you do that, it's fine. I mean, highly unrecommended, but you can still do it if you want to, right? End of the day, as I mentioned, right, you're a self-publisher. You have every right to make the cover that you want, to get the editing that you want. And of course, the story that you want. Now, having said all this, no story structure formula, right? Be it the 8-point plot framework or be it the snowflake model, there are n number of ways of doing it, right? You have the hero's journey, you have the 3-act structure. No story structure or formula is going to guarantee you a bestseller. Let me assure you that there is absolutely no story structure out there which will guarantee you a bestseller. But having said that, every bestseller will have all the requirements of a great story. So you can pick up any great movie that you have seen, and I can guarantee you, I'm ready to take a challenge with you on this, that I can pinpoint to you exactly how these 8 elements or 8 plot points of a great story are integrated in that story, no matter which story you pick up. I guarantee you I can do it, because quite simply, this is an element of science which is there behind storytelling. Okay. So with that, we are almost at the end of my session. And if there is one thing that you guys are going to take away from whatever little time we have spent together on this call, I don't want you to waste 10 years to write your book. So that is one thing I definitely don't want you to do. And as promised, I'm going to share detailed articles on the 8-point framework with you. And also, for those of you who have really waited until now, if you go to my website, writewithjay.com, and subscribe, I'm going to share a personalized copy of a post-apocalyptic short story that I wrote, which won the South Asian Award for Microfiction last year. It's an award called Literati, and it has participation from various, budding, upcoming, and established authors from South Asia rather. And my story won first prize in that. So it's a post-apocalyptic, slightly sci-fi overtones, but I'm going to share this free of cost with anyone and everyone who subscribes on my website today. And as promised, even if you were to not really go ahead and write your book, I would seriously urge you to please subscribe and get access to these 2 articles on the 8-point plot framework, which I'm going to share with you. And it has some inbuilt examples. So whatever idea you have in your mind, in half an hour, I guarantee you, you will be able to at least understand whether this is a book you're going to write or not. So with that, I'd like to open the house for questions. Unless, of course, Yashasvi has some closing comments to add.
Before that, it's that one more thing moment, although you should be doing that. But the thing is, during our discussions, I convinced Jay to launch the first course on our learning platform, which we are launching as of today. It's called the Academy, and you can access it through academy.naply.com. Academy with a K. We'll drop the link there. And the reason, I'll just tell you why we are launching this platform. It's to bring professionals such as Jay. It took a lot of coaxing for me to bring him on board to do this. And as you would have realized, anybody else taking any course and he taking a course on writing, there's a whole world of difference between the two. He has been trained by the best-selling self-published author, and now he is one of India's best-selling and best-selling by his definition, which is of course the best way to judge it, best-selling by sales. So now he is ready to mentor the next set of writers who will carry the baton forward. So we have a course which we are starting on the 16th of September. It's spread over 9 sessions, and Jay will be taking the sessions and personally mentoring the participants. I will just request Jay to quickly, I think he has given a fair idea about what his approach is overall, but just to be very specific and structured, these are the 9 sessions that you will be going through. The first slide I will explain. So this is a platform where you will we'll launch more courses. The next weekend we'll be launching a beautiful course on the beautiful art of photography, where you will be able to take cutting edge photographs just by using a simple mobile phone, and the person who will be taking this session would be an ace photographer. So we'll be launching such courses. The overall idea behind these courses is exactly what the title of the session is here. To help you create legacy and to help you generate wealth. Whatever is the skill that you get, you should be able to generate wealth from that. Right? So every course will have on-demand videos. It will have assignments. You will have access to the recorded sessions for a complete year. You can access it through your laptop, desktop, on your mobile phone. We will issue certificate from NAPLI if that is what matters, which you can use for your on your CV as well. I'm confident that it will have some weightage in the academic and professional world as well, right? So Jay, can you just please run them through the structure of your course, which we are launching on the 16th of September?
Absolutely, Yashasvi. Thanks. So, guys, can you all see my screen? Yashasvi, if you could just confirm.
Yes,
My
I
screen is
can see.
visible.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, guys, as Yashasvi mentioned, so he has mentioned it before also. I've been associated with Napoli. These guys are really, really passionate people, and I'm sure most of you guys already know that their app is doing some brilliant work. It's right up there with Times of India and some of the greatest news applications out there. And I'm really happy that Yashasvi has taken his passion one step forward and to really take it to a level where we are going to work on dedicated courses from experts, as he mentioned, be it photography, be it writing, be it IS preparation, so be it different types of exam prep. We have a great pipeline of stuff coming your way, and I will just take a quick few minutes to really walk you through what this course will really include. So as Yash mentioned, we're really going to look at 9 sessions, which would happen over a period of time. And unlike a lot of courses that you have out there, where you just get access to a certain recording, and there's negligible focus on really hands-on training, or a face-to-face interaction between the trainer and the participants. So that is something that we're going to try and shake over here. So between these 9 courses of 9 sessions worth 12 hours consolidated package, what you will see is that every single session has a good deal of theory followed by a lot of live interaction, because as I mentioned, right, every book is unique, every author is unique, and this is not a finance course, or it's not a mathematics course where there will be only one correct answer, which is why we really felt that this course should have a lot of interaction, a lot of individualized attention, and that is why we are planning to really cover this in the form of 9 structured sessions. So in terms of your first session, this will really give you a quick overview of some of these things that some of the misconceptions that people have, some of the random excuses and absolute myths which keep people from really writing their first book. So with this course, I guarantee you that within 6 months, so as I mentioned, right, it's possible, it's mathematically possible for you to write and publish a book tomorrow morning. But if you really want a book which you can be proud of, something that will really only build a long-term asset for you to generate money for you lifelong, as long as you're able to maintain the quality and able to periodically produce more and more books. So this is what really the intro session will talk about. We'll dispel some of the myths and give you a crystal clear roadmap of how you can become an internationally published author within 6 months, and most importantly, without burning a hole in your pocket or losing sleep. Because you have a lot of vanity publishers out there who are just going to take 50K from you, 80K from you, and they will promise you to get a book out there on Amazon globally, and they will do it. I mean, absolutely, there is no question about it. There are a lot of vanity publishers who will do it for you. But my question to you remains, right? Like, do you want to be amongst those 99% books out there, those 99% authors who never really write a second book? So this course will really help you set the mindset for that. The second session is going to be really, really interesting. And this is going to give you a bird's eye view of the smart modern author. So, writing today is not just about, writing a manuscript and giving it to some publisher who will take care of everything else for you. There is a lot that a smart modern author does, right? From the different tools that can be used for writing your book, the different techniques that can be mentioned, that can be used, which I had mentioned as part of the Author Academy piece, right? And this will really give you the larger picture. What does it really take? Like, if I want to be an author today, what are some of the tools that I need to have? What are some of the freelancers that I need to be working with to edit my book well, to get my cover right? Who's that one person who can hold my hand and really, take me through this whole journey? And, at a 30,000 feet view from the top, what really does it take, right? Like, end of the day, it's going to be your book. It's going to be something that you should have copyright over. It is something that you need to protect with an international serial book number. So we look at a big bird's eye view of, where you interact with the government, where you interact with the copyright bodies, where you interact with Amazon, where you really interact with your readers. So this is going to be an end-to-end kind of value stream where you'll understand at each stage what you need to do to be a smart modern author. The focus is always and always going to be on two things. One, creating a real legacy that you're proud of. And secondly, to generate wealth. If you're not interested in either one of these two things, then let me be upfront clear with you. This course will probably not be for you. If you just want to, get a book and get it out there, you can do it by tomorrow morning. There are a lot of free YouTube videos that can teach you how to do it. But if you really want to create a legacy and if you want to create wealth in the long term, then this is the session for you. And yeah, as I mentioned, this session 3 will really talk about, what you really mean by generating long-term wealth. How can you do it, right? It's not just about writing a book, putting it out there on Amazon and then waiting for the royalties to flow in. There's a lot that goes on behind it. And you will realize that you can disproportionately exploit the modern publishing landscape to maximize your wealth by prioritizing your most critical resource, which is time. So you can, take 10 years to learn the rugs, and I'm sure you will be as good a writer as me, if not better. But if you don't want to spend those 10 years learning it the hard way, you can prioritize and, get writing straight away with the right kind of guidance. So as we have already seen some of these modules before, Author Academy is actually, a very, it's not a session per se. It's not a 90-minute session that you're going to get. It's going to be a certain set of tools, frameworks, and really the culture. You're going to imbibe a certain culture, which will make sure that even if it's 500 words per day, I mean, your typical WhatsApp message, word count every day is going to exceed 1,000. If not on WhatsApp, then definitely through emails, definitely through any other kind of correspondence that you do with your clients or with your colleagues. So by simply writing 500 words a day, you'll be amazed that translates to 15,000 words in a month. And you just need 50,000 words to write a good quality novel. So writing a quality book, Author Academy, this session is going to be a lifelong habit that you will inculcate. Similarly, the Author Alchemy session, now this is deliberately kept short because the advantage of learning Author Alchemy is to really understand what are some of the best paid and free resources that you can use for editing, cover design, typesetting, ebook and paperback setup. And of course, certain things like ISBN and copyright, which ensures that your intellectual property always remains with you, it's always protected. This session is deliberately kept short because the whole philosophy behind Author Alchemy is getting the right kind of people to do the right kind of work for you. So I have literally spent weeks and weeks looking for the best freelancers on Upwork, on Freelancer, on Readsy.com. There's a whole bunch of places where I have handpicked a couple of editors, and I have even established certain kind of understanding with them that they would give definite discounts for people who come together for this. And not only will you get a discount, you'll also be redirected to the right kind of editor for your book. So if you write thrillers, I will get you the editor who specializes in thrillers. I'm not going to get you some random editor, whoever is available. Your book, your manuscript will be sent to the entire pool of editors that I have, and only the best suited one who gives you the best quote will really help you out on your project. Similarly, Author Armory, right? I mean, there is no use having a great story and packaging it well if it's not going to sell more than 500 copies in a lifetime. So this is the whole last part. And this is again a long session because this part typically involves dealing with long-term relationships, and your best asset is going to be another pool of, equally motivated and talented authors like you. So we'll cover all of this in the Author Armory piece. I have spoken about this a little bit throughout our session, but DNA of continuous improvement is going to be an extremely important session, which will not only help you write great books and sell them better, but it is something that you can actually apply to your life. And it will definitely, if nothing else, this session alone is going to more than be worth what you pay for this entire course. And another thing is that just doing this course alone can literally save you 45,000 rupees. And I'm not kidding. If you go to Notion Press, if you go to White Falcon, if you go to any of the vanity publishers that we have in India today, you will be spending minimum 50 to 80K on, getting all solutions under one roof. And I can save you that entire amount in exchange for the cost of this course. Okay. And of course, there's no point not having a checklist, which in the spirit of continuous improvement, you will be iterating this checklist as well. And I guarantee you this checklist is going to be unique for every single person who signs up for this course. So it's not one size fits all, right? Just because I write thrillers doesn't mean that I'm going to ask a romance, a person who loves romance to write thrillers. That's not how it's going to work. And the checklists are dramatically different for whether you're a non-fiction writer or a fiction writer. And finally, the last session, this session is really applicable only if you've completed the 8 sessions before. So this is where we'll, put all the theory, we'll kick it on the backside and we'll get down to writing. I will personally agree on certain timelines with each and every one of you who signs up for this course. You will be held accountable. You will be assigned buddies. You will really, really, with utmost guarantee, have a best-selling novel out in 6 months. Provided you do the work, you will get absolutely everything you need. But obviously, until you get down on your backside and start typing, it's not going to happen. So that is one thing I'll expect from you. Everything else will be taken care of. Guaranteed bestseller in 6 months. Okay. That's it from my side, Yash, if you would like to add something else.
Yeah, so please visit academy.naukri.com. You will get the details of the course, which he has already explained. And do consider joining it if you have ever considered writing as even your part-time career. And I'm sure, see, the idea behind this whole arrangement was to make sure that you get value out of the time that you spend with us now. And I'm sure, like I have, in spite of, I already had much discussion with him, but still in this session, I got to know a few things, especially the Amazon algorithm. I got to know that whenever I write my dream book, I will not only not promote it to my family members, I will ban them from buying it, because then the algorithm will promote it to similar people. They're not attending the webinar, so I can say I can say this. And the second big takeaway was that instead of one book, now I should be focusing on 10 books. So I have this. I always had this urge in myself of creating a Sherlock Holmes kind of character. Now, with his help, it will be elementary, I think, my dear viewer. So on this note, I think we can end this session. For anything else, you can always shoot a mail to feedback@naukri.com. Like I said, now we will be regularly doing the webinars, and you will always get value out of the webinar, and then we will leave it to you if you want to join the course and generate your legacy and wealth through that.
Yeah,
so,
yes, there is one question.
Okay.
So, I'm asking the question, and Jay, you can answer this. Anil Vishnu, he is asking opinion on writing on Medium as opposed to directly going ahead with Amazon KDP in book format.
So, okay, great. I'm sorry, I didn't catch the name of the person who asked this question.
Anil.
Hi, Anil. So, first of all, thank you. That's a great question. It's absolutely something that I have been asked before. So, my quick 2 cents on that would be that if you are some kind of subject matter expert, or more of a casual, or to some extent a semi-professional blogger, where you like say you're a data scientist. I'm just going to assume that you're a great data scientist, and there's a whole bunch of subject matter expertise you'd like to share in a very organized and a very standardized form. What you would do is you typically write on Medium, because there your objective is exposure. You want more and more people to know that you write. You want more and more people to know that here is a guy worth following, worth subscribing on, right? That is where you typically use an already existing platform like Medium, where your only effort is writing the article. You don't have to worry about a platform. You don't have to worry about hosting it. You don't have to worry about where it's going to be published and stuff. Whereas the advantage of going with Kindle Direct Publishing is that here you will actually be building a product. See, end of the day, you cannot say that a bunch of articles on Medium constitutes as a product, or it's not something which you can tomorrow you may not have control over it, right? It happens, right? Certain articles might get removed. Anything can happen. So end of the day, let me ask you a question this way, right? If you were to start a business, would you be comfortable if your entire business was run through, say, a Facebook group or say a WhatsApp group, right? You would be very, very uncomfortable, because tomorrow Facebook might, block your group. Tomorrow WhatsApp might discontinue. Anything can happen. So long and so short, Medium is a fantastic platform. if you really just, if your intent is more about information dissemination, where you want to create a quick standard place where people can go and just check out your articles. Whereas a book is more like a product. It's like a long-term permanent asset that you have with you. So once you write a book, you are going to get royalties for it for your entire life, as long as it's reaching the right people at the right time. I hope that answers your question, Anil.
Yeah, I think so. And the next question is from Gagan. And Gagan says that my question was, how do you as a writer figure out what you are going to write about? If this comes after audience research, then how do you do that? So do you do any kind of research, or is it some kind of epiphany that strikes that, okay, this is something I want to write? That's perhaps the question which Gagan is asking. So you can just delve deep on it.
So Gagan, I think that's a great question, and a lot of, this is deliberately a topic I don't myself address because it gives people a very wrong impression. But now that you've asked the question, let me tell you one thing. Virtually all of the really successful writers out there, they do something which is called write to market. So what that literally means is, even before you have written a single word, or even before you have a broad idea in your mind, you're actually going to understand. So this is some of the technical stuff that I would be covering as part of your author academy itself, and to some extent Armory and also Alchemy, because this is one topic which cuts across. So after 50 Shades of Grey, the book and subsequently the movie came out, the whole raunchy romance genre just kicked off. It just picked up like never before. See, romance was always one of the most popular categories. But the moment something like this comes, right, something which changes a trend, that's when you'll see a lot of successful writers, they immediately latch on to that trend. Because simple, long answer short, end of the day, you may write something which you love or which may be absolutely fantastic for you. But the only judge of whether a story was good or not is the reader, according to me. And when readers, get latched onto a certain kind of theme, that is the wave that you need to ride. Now, the reason why I don't speak of this upfront is because then people feel, yeah, then what's the point? I want to write because I love writing something. Why should I write something which I may not even enjoy, but other people are wanting to read that kind of stuff. So this is the fun part. Do you know there are over 36,000 categories or genres on Amazon? We don't know that. When you go to Kindle, when you go to Amazon, you'll only see some 20 or 30 categories with some, maybe 30, 40 subcategories. But in reality, there are 36,000 categories and increasing. So end of the day, long answer short, the way I approach it is, I get some epiphany in my head. Then I do a full market research. What of these tropes? That is why I mentioned tropes. You need to understand what storytelling tools are going to work with that genre or that certain target market that you're writing for. So for example, if you really enjoy writing romance, but you go to the sweet romance section, you see what kind of books are doing well. If you go there, you'll automatically understand that, best part is read the reviews of the top few books. Buy those books. I do that. I'm a thriller writer. So at any given point of time, the top 5 books which are trending on Amazon India in the thriller section, they are on my Kindle without a second opinion. Right? So I've invested in a Kindle Unlimited subscription. You should also do it. Whichever genre you write, go to the bestseller, see what books are doing well there. Sometimes that will help you shape your epiphany as well. You might also get a fresh idea based on what is already working in the market. So I hope to some extent that can answer your question. And having said that, never do I compromise. I always write stuff that I really love writing, but I always make sure this has an enough overlap with what people are reading. It's as simple as that.
Right. So Jay, that was quite elaborate, I think. Shubham is asking very interesting question. How do micro-blogging platforms add up to the craft of writing?
So to be fair, by micro-blogging platforms, if you're talking about stuff like Twitter or, maybe places, and I think you have Substack and you have a couple of these places where you can actually monetize your micro writing, right? So to be fair, see, that is not something which I would consider under the ambit of self-publishing or being an indie author, because to be fair, that is something you can do, and things like Substack can actually help you monetize it as well. I mean, by all means do it. And just somewhere, it's just my opinion, I feel that these things work far better for non-fiction. So like, for example, if you okay, I've already taken the data science example, but say you're a great pundit when it comes to stocks, or you have a certain research that you have done in terms of what kind of stocks you should buy, what kind of strategy you should follow. So in that case, if you were a micro blogger, I would be more likely to follow you. Whereas if you were the kind of guy that, say you've spent 20 years in the stock market industry, you understand it really well. What will make far more sense for you at that stage would be to come out with a book, preferably an audio book. Nothing like it if you come up with an audio and hard copy book available around the world. Because typically you're going to be taken more seriously when you write a book. And typically a book is where you want to put together a whole bunch of ideas, connect the dots, and give one coherent picture, right? You would do more of micro blogging and stuff like that for more, transient things. Like if you were a guy today and your niche is, latest trends in data science, then I would want to follow your blog, right? Why would I read your book? Because by the time you write the book, something else has come in data science, right? So there's a very subtle difference. Yeah.
Okay. Next question is from Sharif. He is asking, please explain about another publishing platform or maybe app Inkit. I think anyways, in the course, you are going to discuss a lot about the tools and the platforms which people can use. But if you can just briefly tell Sharif about any other publishing platform that you think might be good for the budding author.
Okay, so by platform, see, like if you're talking about a platform to really write your book or edit your book, so there are lots of free things out there. Like I use readsy.com. I used to use readsy.com for really writing the first draft of my book. Why? For the simple reason, it makes my life easy. Later, I discovered that, Google Docs or a simple Microsoft Word file on my laptop is doing better for me. I use that. So similarly, you have something called draft2digital.com, which can help you convert a manuscript written in MS Word to any ebook format that you want. You can get your EPUB format, you can get your Mobi file format, which works for, depending on whether you want to publish on Apple Books or you want to publish on KDP. So there are a whole bunch of tools out there that you can use, right from, stuff like basic editing, right? You have things like Grammarly.com, you have Pro Writing Aid. Their free and paid versions are brilliant. You can definitely go for Hemingway app editor. So there are a whole bunch of tools, and it's instead of looking at this as a one question, you have to understand what is your need. Now, are you a working guy? Do you write when you commute, or are you the kind of guy who comes home, likes to sit down, have dinner, maybe have a quick drink, and then sit down to write? Depending on your style, the tool that you should use will also change. And by the way, a lot of my real pro self-published authors, they write 5,000 words an hour. You'll not believe it. Why? Because the tool that they use is Tag and Dictate. Now, I'm more than happy at hitting 1,000 words a day, and there are people who do 5,000 words an hour, right? We are at different stages of our journey. So the tool they use is Tag and Dictate. I don't use it. I've tried it in the past, but I realized that I'm that kind of creative person that unless I see some words in front of my eyes, it makes it very difficult for me to proceed. So when I dictate, I have tried the dictation software. What I realized is that I will dictate a few things and then I'll feel, no, I need to go back and see, what was there before this and all. So I'm that kind of guy. So for me, actually seeing the text while I type helps. So the answer to what kind of tools you should use would definitely depend on what kind of person you are. And there are certain standard tools that I've already mentioned. Do try out Grammarly, Hemingway app. Definitely try out Readsy, Draft2Digital. There's a whole host of tools out there.
So our next question is from Deepak, and I think this question would be relevant to a much wider segment, and many people are hesitant to write because of this very basic thing. I have question for grammar related. Deepak is asking, what you want to write, you have picture in your mind, but when it comes to pen it down, you need grammar. What should I do about grammar?
Sir, I would like to just answer this with a very, very simple question. Today, say you know 100 words. Say, let's just take, very brutal example. Today, say you know only 100 words. Add just 1% to your vocabulary. So add just one word to your vocabulary every single day. And the best way to do it is by writing, So by the way, there is something, this is a great question because there is something called wordclouds.com. What that does is, so this is another free tool you can use. Whenever you've written a paragraph or a page, like preferably, write 2,000-3,000 words, copy paste everything in wordclouds.com. You know what this tool will do? It will show you, it will actually pick out certain words that you're using very, very often or very, very commonly, or you're overusing these words, and it will actually show it in a larger size compared to the rest. So the advantage of something like this is you will automatically understand that you're a person who keeps saying very all the time. That she felt very good, he felt very good, he was very scared, she was very tired. So, you don't realize that subconsciously there are a lot of tics that you have, a lot of tics that I have. a lot of my ticks have changed only because I purposely work with different editors with every book. And despite the fact that I have 4 books which are almost out there, 2 are already out, 2 are almost out there. You would not believe it. I have worked with 8 editors. The reason is not because I want to see who's a better editor. I mean, that's anyway happening. That's a side product. The main reason why I work with so many editors is because each one teaches me something different about my grammar, something that I can work on, something I can improve. So my answer to you is extremely simple. If you don't know the right type of words to use, you should simply start reading. Like anyone and everyone who wants to be a writer should today, immediately after this seminar, webinar, immediately get a Kindle Unlimited subscription. It is just $169 a month. With that, you can read unlimited books, which are on Kindle Unlimited. So that is the best way to improve your vocabulary. Just keep reading more and keep writing more. And keep seeing what words you use more often and then try and use synonyms.
So one last question from Gagan.
Yeah.
Gagan is asking, based on median audience sizes across genres,
Yeah.
what would be the best one to hit right now?
Oh, okay. Brilliant question. And unfortunately, the answer might be a little annoying for people because this is a genre which people either love or hate. So I think that's answered the question. It's undoubtedly romance.
Is it
Undoubtedly romance.
I thought vampires.
No. So without no, but see again, like I mentioned, there are 36,000 categories on Amazon. So a layman will say that romance, or a layman will say thriller. But in reality, within romance, you have so many subgenres, right? You have urban fantasy, within that young adult, within that paranormal romance. So you can have so many different layers. And the best part is Amazon bestseller ranks are for each node and not really the stem, right? So although if you go to Amazon.in or Amazon.com and you search for any book, you will see that, this is #1 bestseller in romance, #1 bestseller in science fiction. But in reality, and you will get to know this the more you write and more you explore the KDP ecosystem, even within romance, there are so many subgenres, it is actually mind-boggling. There are 36,000 plus genres overall. So you're going to go crazy finding out which is the best. And by the way, since you guys wanted to know some tools, there is this tool called Publisher Rocket. So it's a paid tool. You have to pay, I think $100 or something like that for it for a lifetime subscription. I have bought that tool. What that does is, if I simply enter a keyword, or if I simply enter a book name, it tells me the bestseller rank. It tells me the entire competitive analysis. That this is the genre right now where the #1 book is actually not ranked really high overall on Amazon. So to answer your question, how do I find out? There's another tool called kdpspy.com. This is again a paid tool. I think it's $57 or $60 if I'm not mistaken. So there are some of these tools which will really help you identify which genres are really selling like hotcakes right now. But having said that, it's pretty much cyclic. It keeps changing. And see, again, you don't want to be behind the curve, right? If you look at what genre is selling well today, you start writing a book. By the time you finish writing that book in 6 months, it would have changed, right? So you need to really keep in mind a couple of these things.
Yeah, so that's it, Jai. We have more or less answered all the questions. There are few, but you have already answered those kind of questions. So that's it from the audience. And I really think that to all those who are present, here is the guy with the storehouse of knowledge on writing. So if somebody is just starting to think about is thinking about the journey and planning to write a book, then this is the guy to get in touch with. So yeah, anything else with Jai you want to close it with, or yes, you want to close it with?
No, I just want to thank him, and I hope everyone will realize this is the ecosystem approach. This is an entire ecosystem that comes to them rather than just the book, which is exactly the reason why I think he's probably the best mentor of budding authors in India right now. So I'm sure the rest you can just go to the site, you can explore, and queries you can shoot. But if you have to join, please join. Beyond a certain limit, I think we will restrict that. So because again, as you would have understood, this is going to be an interactive program, and you may want to. If you can, then why not? Naply depends on that. So if you know people who would be interested in this course, along with the recording of this webinar, it will become available, I think, in the next 2 days. Please share it with them. All right, and please bear with us if you get 2-3 promotional mails or messages from our side. Every day I get bombarded by 10 White Hat Junior messages, although I never even showed any remote interest in that. So I hope you will bear with that. A few promotional messages, and please send forward them to your friends. Thanks a lot. It takes a lot of patience, because I'm sure many of you are already on calls all the day, including Jay for that matter. His stamina, I can now understand why he's able to write 1,000 words every day. And when you look at his smile, just so you do understand that his energy and his talent and his patience will flow in your work when you join the course.
Yashasvi, sorry to interrupt, I can tell you the secret about that.
Yeah.
You know, the feeling of holding something that you have written is absolutely priceless. And honestly, that's the only thing that keeps me going. So I would really feel happy if.
And I can say
more
the
of you
same
guys did it.
for Napoli. I was trying to open the app, but let's close this. The feeling, the reason why these people are here. So I can totally, but I don't have anything in hardbound right now. But I'm sure, see, again, I also want to do it. We will have a structured approach.
I am marking it here, the Napoli logo for you, Yashasvi, on the screen.
Okay, yeah. For you as well, by the way, Siddharth is a co-founder. I take all the credit, and he does most of the work in the background. So yeah, so for both of us, and for Jay as well, and for all of you for that matter. So yeah, so please explore it, and the next weekend we will invite you to webinar, an interactive webinar on digital photography using your camera. The objective is that in the next in 40 minutes you will be able to take beautiful photographs, and if you are interested to basically evolve into a part-time or full-time professional photographer, then you might consider joining that course. That will be our approach going forward. Thanks a lot. We can end the session.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Jay. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
Bye.
It's an
Good
absolute
night.
pleasure. Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks.